So, you've all seen this by now, I think. The FBI is back, and you wonder why. Let me know what you think. Comment below. Tell me, why is the FBI back? Anyways, I was reading some comments yesterday on Get a Clue's blog. I love his blog. And I did make this point there too. But I was wondering, and this is something that the PCA is quite quiet on. I was wondering about this point that some of us are struggling with in terms of this crime being committed by one perpetrator. And some people have questioned this, rightly so, I think, by addressing the mess. Um, the mess of having to clean up and just being one person. So, to account for that, some people have noted these rumors about kill kits and overalls or jumpsuits. And that's kind of meant to explain why there's no trace evidence on Brian Koberger or in his car, apparently, and stuff like that. And when we look at the possibility of the scene being too clean in terms of DNA, um, in that there's just one fingerprint, we can say, Brian Koberger as the killer was well protected in what he was wearing, and maybe there was some kind of a cleanup. Some people allude that to the 8 hour gap. Some people say it was Brian Koberger himself. But if this was one person with one weapon, then I'm kind of wondering, what about the actual victims in terms of mess, for lack of a better word? Um, should there not be some kind of cross contamination across the incident scenes and across the victims? They want us to believe that this was all one person with one weapon. But they haven't actually provided any information on who was attacked first. Because if it's one person, then it has to happen in a certain order. If it's multiple people, then things can occur at the same time. But it's one person according to them, so there has to be a first, second, third, and fourth victim. So if Kaylee and Maddie were attacked first, which I gather quite a lot of people believe, then I'm wondering, wouldn't their blood or DNA be found on Ethan and Xana and in their room? Because think about it. We're attributing the lack of blood to an overall, possibly, or some kind of clothing and gloves. But then, did he have two overalls? And did he change them over between the third and the second floor? And did he take the time to wash his K-bar knife between the third and the second floor? Or did he have two K-bar knives and he changed them over again between the floors? Like a spare K-bar, and then it was just interchangeable. I really want to think about this because logically, if we're looking at one person and one weapon, and we want to really commit to that idea, then it completely changes the chronological factors of how it would be if this was 2 to 4 people. There has to be one person first and one person last. And I would expect that DNA from the first person should be carried through all the way to the fourth person. If they really want us to accept this idea, one person, one weapon, then why haven't they actually told us who was attacked first? Or is it more likely that this was a case of 2 to 4 perpetrators? And as I mentioned, this idea of who may have been first is not discussed in the PCA. And I think that that is probably more revealing. The absence of that discussion is more revealing than the actual content of what they would have to say, because there are certain reliability queries when it comes to this PCA. Um, for example, this is a document that claims that Dylan Mortensen was part of how they confirmed that everybody was at home and in their rooms by 4 a.m. But then it also claims that she was woken up at 4 a.m. This is in the same document. So we are expected to believe that she is someone who is hyper observant in her sleep because she has information about the whereabouts of her housemates while she's asleep, but she can't really comment on them being killed while she's awake. So maybe she has a better memory in her sleep. I don't know. But there's so many inconsistencies with this document that I think their vagueness on who may have been attacked first doesn't necessarily mean that they don't know. It might mean that, they're not saying, or that there isn't evidence on who was attacked first. And I do wonder what that means. If there's no cross contamination, and I'm not an expert on this, but if there's no cross contamination, then does that imply more than one killer? Does that mean that, because I mean, this is like from a logical perspective. I used to teach logic when I was a TA. Um, so just like from a common sense kind of perspective, if this is one perpetrator, then you can think of it as 4 crimes occurring right after each other if you're looking at it in time snaps. But if this is, for example, 4 perpetrators, then it can be 4 crimes occurring at the same time instead of them needing to happen one after each other. So break up the incidents into 4 and try and assess, is it more likely that they happened at the same time, or did they actually occur in some kind of timeline where there was one first, one second, third, and fourth victim? Or was there actually no order to the victims? Was it possibly more something that occurred all at the same time, which might explain the lack of cross contamination? Let me know what you think. I'd love to know. And do have a beautiful day further. Bye.